Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the school committee meeting. We'll call to order at 7:06 p.m. Our meeting for September 6th, 2023. And the first thing we'll do is pledge allegiance to the flag.
Recording in progress.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so before we approve the agenda for this evening, does anyone have any changes to make as we look over it? Okay. In that case, we can proceed, and the first item on our agenda will be Citizen Speak. So it's great to see we have some members of the community who are in person with us here this evening. I'm not sure if we have anyone online, but just to remind folks, for Citizen Speak, we've set up to 15 minutes aside for members of the community to join our meetings and have up to 3 minutes apiece to share their perspective with us as a school committee. We're not able to respond to questions or comments in the moment, but we appreciate your joining, and we're able to follow up as appropriate on the issues that are raised. So I know that we have a number. Could you just raise your hand if you are here in the room to participate in Citizen Speak? Okay, great. So we can let you go first since you are here. And then anybody who's online who may be hoping to participate, if you can just be prepared to raise your hand to indicate your interest in participating in Citizen Speak, then we will be able to elevate you to participate. And so just a reminder, you have up to 3 minutes, and please just introduce yourself when you begin your remarks. And thank you very much. You can feel free to join us at the head of the table. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Do I have 2 mics here?
Yeah.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Serene Hamsho, and I am here today on behalf of the Milton Muslim neighbors, representing over 300 residents of Milton. I'm also here on behalf of my 2 daughters, Leah and Aline, who are busy on the phone, and also as an expectant mother to a future Miltonian. I'm here to humbly request that the school committee consider adding Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha as official days off to the school calendar, following the example set by neighboring public school districts as Cambridge and Acton. These 2 holidays are the most sacred ones to more than 2 billion Muslims around the world, and also here in the United States. They hold the same sacredness as Easter and Yom Kippur, and the same joy as Christmas. While these mentioned holidays are heavily celebrated within our district, Eid has remained invisible. And while they are mentioned on the school calendar, and while school principals and staff always try to accommodate students, it is still a significant burden for our students and kids and staff who wish to observe this day with their families and communities while not missing school. Imagine taking an MCAS exam on a Christmas day. It's exactly the same feeling. By including Eid as a school holiday, we send a powerful message of inclusion and respect to our Muslim students. It acknowledges their faith, validates their cultural identity, which is the most important thing to me, and makes them feel valued and accepted within our educational system. It is also a valuable educational opportunity because it allows us to teach our students about the diversity of the world and the importance of cultural competency, and which will promote tolerance and empathy among them. I understand adding another holiday to the school's calendar requires careful consideration. It may raise questions about the number of instructional days and the impact of the academic schedule. However, it's worth noting that many school districts across the country have successfully incorporated Eid as holiday without significant disruptions. We can look to them for guidance and best practice. And I can say as a mother, having a day off is the best educational opportunity for our kids, because the first question the kids will ask is why it's a holiday. And this question alone kicks off a great conversation about diversity. I urge the school committee to seriously consider the inclusion of Eid as a school holiday, especially that we are coming to a crucial election year in 2024, where Muslims' name, believe me, will be heard all over the news. And students should be armed with knowledge about their Muslim peers before falling into the media trap. I urge the school committee to consider the positive impact that recognizing Eid as an official day off can have on our community. It sends a clear message that we value diversity and are committed to creating an environment where every student can thrive.
You could just wrap up.
Just in conclusion, I would just say a probably 20 seconds history. As an immigrant parent, I was born and grew up in one of the most conservative towns in the entire world, a town called Hama, in the middle of nowhere in Syria. This town has a population of over 99.99 Muslim, yet every single year we have to take Easter as a day off, we have to take Christmas as a day off, even though we had no single Christian students in our school. Every single year, we used to have and hang and install the longest Christmas tree in our downtown, even though the Christians were a minority in the town. That was back in Syria. And to be honest, I feel super confused that I'm raising my American kids here in the United States, and I have to explain to them every year that's why diversity, they are not included in the school and where they are not celebrated the same way that we used to celebrate it in Syria. So appreciate the opportunity, and thank you so much.
Thank you for coming and sharing with us.
Thank you.
Is anybody online with their hands raised? Okay. Anyone else want to, before we move on from Citizen Speak? Okay. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. And at this point, we can hand it over to Dr. Burrows for our superintendent's report.
So wanted to start out just by saying how great the start was. We welcomed staff back last week on Monday and changed things up a little bit. We kind of historically have had a little bit more time in the auditorium and some kind of operational training. This year we spent about an hour together in the auditorium and really enabled me to have time to be with staff, to start to kind of build team. And to talk about what's important. I shared a little bit about who I am, not kind of things that they would have gleaned from the hiring process, but things that were and are important to me that I thought were important for them to know as I take on this really important role. We then went outside and spent a couple hours just really kind of like connecting. We had kind of focus on employee wellness, and we invited organizations from throughout Milton and beyond to come. Glenn worked his magic and brought a tent in. We had all sorts of Adirondack chairs out. It was really wonderful. And I think it was important in terms of my start in this role too. From there, we've had, we're in our second week already, and first week was great. I was in 3 schools on Wednesday, 3 schools on Thursday, and then spent yesterday for a half day welcoming all of our pre-K and K students who were coming. And we've had a great start. We've got some new employees. We've got obviously many returning employees. So I'm spending a lot of time in these first weeks just making sure that everything's kind of running smoothly. People are getting what they need. And oftentimes when you're in the central office, you do a whole bunch of work leading up to the start of school. It's very feverish, and then everyone just goes and everyone in the central office just kind of goes, like that. So we're definitely exhaling and also kind of looking ahead to now now here we go, and really starting to plan. So we feel like, I think a lot of the planning that we did over the summer was powerful and impactful, and now we have to capitalize on that in terms of starting to bring some of the structures and some of the other things that I've shared, I think, with some of you or all of you in previous conversations about what my plans are in year one to start to help to move Milton towards a more cohesive direction with everybody on board. So great opening. A couple of events that are coming up I just wanted to mention. We've got a football game, the Glow for Gold. Does everyone know what that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just learning, but I think everyone else knows what that is. That's on September 14th from 7 to 9. We have a blood drive at Cunningham Hall on the 22nd. The Glow for Gold Day is the 29th. We are also working, we're going to get an update from the Finance Subcommittee later on in today's meeting. That's something that we are working, Glenn and I are kind of working in earnest as we start to work with our principals and our larger, what is now called the Curriculum Leadership Team, which was formerly called Full Leadership Team. We realize that we have a lot of systems pieces to start thinking about, and one of the challenges in the cycle of a school district budget is you have to make decisions really early in the year for the following year. And the big part of planning for a budget is staffing. And it's not just how many FTE you have, but it's how are you utilizing those FTE. So we have a lot of work to do, and we talked about it today in our central office leadership team meeting. We have a lot of work to do with our principals and that curriculum leadership team to start to talk about, as we think about what's happening in FY25 and then FY26, what kinds of things do we want to start moving towards, some of which we have to really start talking about now if we're going to make any kind of changes in, we're kind of talking about end of November really, where we would have to have that work done as we move in. So we're not going to do everything in 1 year. I think that's pretty clear. These things are going to take some time. Doing them the right way is really important. Another thing that we're working on, communications, is something that we are trying to help to make more efficient and clear, so you know that the blog isn't happening this year, the superintendent's weekly blog, which was essentially gathering all the information from the district and putting it into it was a big read, and we're looking at trying to make the information more impactful and in a way that people can digest it. So some of those things are going to be pushed to the Friday communications from principals. Stephanie's working on district communications, and then I'll be sending out a monthly communication as well. We are also really aware of the email load on staff. We send out probably in 1 week, Glenn, how many staff-wide emails go out in 1 week? A lot, yeah, a lot. And so it's a lot to go through. So we're putting together a weekly MPS district communication from the central office and all of those directors as well, so that staff once a week will have all the information in one place. They can go back and they can find the information in one place. They don't have to hunt through 35 emails to try to find out, okay, where was I supposed to be? What was supposed to be happening? So we're starting that next week. These are some of the things that we're kind of starting to work on in terms of systems and trying to make things make more sense. What else? And then I think the other thing that at the central office that we're working on is really kind of like trying to make connections between schools and between buildings to kind of engage as a district as opposed to silos. I know it's something we talked about this morning a little bit in our budget conversation, where we're our budget process, we're going to be working to bring everybody together as opposed to individual presentations and individual needs. We're going to try to look across all of our schools to make sure that we're kind of doing that as a district. And we're doing that on a lot of different levels. So this systems work that I'm talking about with this communication is mirrored in a lot of other work that we're doing right now to have singular processes as opposed to 3 or 4 in 3 or 4 different schools, and then 2 where you have to know somebody to figure out how to get something done. So that's work that I think is won't take a long time to figure out. I think we're finding that some of these changes are kind of immediate and are going to be really helpful. So that's my update.
Great, thanks. Anyone have any questions? Discussion?
And I have a comment. Just say thank you for starting the year in such a positive note. I've heard only great things, just in terms of the feel of the year already. So I just thank you for that leadership and for wanting to bring the district together with new energy, and I think that's needed. And I know we felt sort of the weight of everything that we've been through over the years, and so I think it was time. So thank you.
I agree. Well done. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Ditto. Opening day was awesome. It really was, and it was really heartwarming to hear so much positive feedback from a wide range of faculty and staff who shared that it was a change of tone, and a sort of renewed sense of excitement about working for Milton Public Schools. So it's just exciting and promising. So yeah, thanks. And as far as the communications, my only question about that is for families, the role of Power School. And I know a couple of weeks ago at our last meeting, we were in the midst of a slight glitch in the rollout, which has since, as far as I know, been smoothed out. And will that platform be playing a role in the communications to families, or is that sort of a separate system?
It will. I mean, Power School enables us to give parents a much deeper view into what's happening as opposed to what we had previously. So it should be another vehicle for parents to feel more connected and have more knowledge about what's happening in terms of a student's schedule and all the other aspects of a student's educational life.
I mainly ask because I'm still quite honestly figuring out how to make a habit about using it and logging into it as a tool. But
well,
it seems
I
like
do
a
feel
good
that we
step.
have to do more outreach so that people better understand how to use it. I think our open houses, which are starting tomorrow, are probably a good kind of beginning point. I'm going to be going tomorrow night to Pierce for the open house. And so I think that's kind of one place where we can do that. But I think we need to do more outreach so that people can kind of figure out how to use it. I think we're just getting to that point. The staff are getting to that point. So I think we'll be able to be in a better place in the weeks ahead to help families also engage on that platform. And it's Power School is the biggest student information system in the country. So it's got, I'm not saying it's the best, but it's definitely above average in terms of access and bugs and things like that.
Is the Power School version the newest version that we have? The one that we have right now, is it the newest version? Because my school district also used Power School before. It looks different from what I see on my kids' Power School page.
How long ago?
4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. I assume we have the most recent version. Garth, do you know? No. We better. If we don't, we need some money back, but.
Does PowerSchool offer like a tech support, like in case like there are some glitches, you're not constantly calling the school, like let's say like, hey, I had like an alert where my kid, it says that my kid was absent today, but I'm sure that they were dropped off, or however. So like, so we're not constantly calling the schools, like parents aren't, like is there?
I think you can contact PowerSchool, but for that kind of thing, you wouldn't contact PowerSchool.
No, I know, but like I'm just using like as an example.
My guess, I think generally most school districts want those questions coming back to the school district to help the parent, as opposed to like a software platform that you might buy where you can call and get like a call center type of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's the locus is more in the district as opposed to
Got it.
you purchasing it kind of from a cloud down.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, like we're hosting it, so I think it's more process. But there's lots of information online about PowerSchool and manuals and all that kind of thing too.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And the other thing alongside PowerSchool is we're also have Time Clock Plus, which we purchased, which will enable us right now. We have a fairly antiquated system of, there's a mixture of paper, spreadsheets. You can't, right now, like as an employee, you can't just go in and see how much leave you have left. There's a process that you have to go through to get that information.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So Time Clock Plus is like an HRIS?
yeah, yep.
We have similar thing too.
You probably have something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have.
Yeah.
What do we have? We just switched to something from ADP.
Okay, I've used that
From
before.
ADP?
Yeah.
Yeah, we use ADP.
Oh yeah.
It's fine.
I can show you what we have.
The person who runs HR is very helpful from like a data consolidation perspective.
Yeah.
But
So we're slowly coming into 2023.
Just started on July 1.
Awesome, right, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, segueing into Chair's report, we have kind of 3 items for just continued discussion. And the first one, superintendent evaluation process, kind of picks up on this theme of systems in terms of improving our systems, kind of setting ourselves up with a clearly planned out process. In this case, talking, of course, about the superintendent evaluation. So we're returning to this topic from our summer retreat where we began the discussion. And I have just a couple of updates and then just open it up to kind of see what we think. The vote that we'll be taking on this topic will be specifically around formally deciding together whether we're moving forward with a subcommittee structure to undertake the evaluation process or continuing with that as a full school committee. Just to kind of recap where we were, especially because a couple of our members weren't here at our last meeting. We moved ahead, and Anna and Selena and myself were kind of going to have a little bit of conversation with Peter to bring us one step further in the planning. Where we ended up with that was 2 things. First of all, identifying the documents, the 2 documents that were included FYI in our folder. These are obviously lengthy documents coming to us from DESE. These are the documents that we will use to guide our process as we follow the state law that kind of dictates the way we approach this evaluation. We do have, of course, autonomy to kind of fit this into the scope of our work as a school committee this year. The things that we kind of created to run by the whole school committee are, number 1, a timeline. So we discussed with Peter a timeline that seemed to make sense, recognizing that as a school committee, we should be having 3 open meetings where we discuss the superintendent evaluation throughout the year. We're proposing that the first meeting, which is where we'll approve the superintendent's goals, that would actually happen on September 20th, so that's our next meeting. And that is where we'll discuss and, you know, vote on the goals that the superintendent has put forward. We would then need a mid-year check-in where we sort of assess progress towards those goals. And we're proposing that take place on January 3rd. And then the third and final meeting on this process, we are proposing would actually be March 20th, which I know is early in the year, but that's a way that we can, and you were referring to the cycle of the budget. You know, we all know that the election for school committee members takes place in April. And I think part of the awkwardness we've run into over the past 2 years was this notion that we have brand new school committees members potentially joining when that process is underway. They do not have experience working with the superintendent potentially, but yet then they're responsible to participate in an evaluation process like immediately. And so we were recognizing at our retreat sort of the inherent like tensions of that cycle. So we were thinking about having it at March 20th, which is the second to last meeting of this current school committee, as a way to wrap up the process, you know, thinking of the annual cycle being like timed with our election process. So that's something that we want to discuss and see what people think about that. Also hope to know, you know, as far as we know at this point in time, are those 3 dates that will work for all of us as far as we know to be in attendance, because we want to include all of our perspectives in all the 3 of those meetings. So that's kind of the first piece. And then the second main piece is just looking at, so hopefully you had an opportunity to review those first 6 pages of the overview of the PDF that outlines DESI's process. There is a section in there, it's on page 5, which kind of discusses the role of a subcommittee in kind of moving the work of the evaluation forward. If that's a direct, and last time we kind of generally talked about that. We didn't formally vote on it. I know Anna, Selena, and I had raised our hands to kind of say we're willing to, you know, take a first step in the process, but I would like to just open that discussion back up. What are the pros and cons of taking that approach? I mean, I think a definite pro is that it sort of creates a nimbleness to the process where 3 of us, rather than all 6 of us, are able to find time, carve it out, and spend time, you know, with you, Peter, to figure out the evidence that you'll be compiling and so forth. And we would then, as a subcommittee, or whomever's on the subcommittee, would report back to the full school committee, including especially at that January 3rd meeting. Alternatively, we would just need to find time in our full school committee meetings to probably have discussions with you about, you know, keeping that moving forward. So anyway, I'll stop there. Those are some pieces to consider, and we see the, you know, the outline of what a subcommittee would be charged with here. And just curious what thoughts you all have on both the proposed timeline and the question of forming a subcommittee.
I cannot make the March 20th meeting.
Okay.
I will be in China with my students. But it
Okay,
seems to be
that's
one
good
of
to
the
know.
important meetings that will conclude the school year a little bit, right?
I do think it would make for a more efficient and robust process. I felt as though in prior years when it was the entire committee working in isolation and then meeting, it didn't have the opportunity, we didn't have a very good opportunity to have in-depth discussions about the feedback and the artifacts that were required. But I do want to ensure that everyone's voice is incorporated. It might slow us down in the end, but I do want to make sure that everyone feels as though they were included and had the opportunity to share their feedback.
So are you supporting, I'm sorry.
I'm
just trying to
supporting the
follow.
subcommittee,
The
is what I'm
subcommittee,
saying, yes.
their subcommittee with feedback from.
Yes.
Got it.
And I think, I mean, your point is very well taken. I think that is probably worth stating, which is my understanding of the process is that, yes, all 6 of us, in the case of our school committee, 6 members, are all ultimately completing the rubric tools which are given to us to participate in the evaluation. It's just
The clarity around the artifacts and what's expected, so it's
Correct.
not.
Yeah.
It's a common expectation is what
Yeah.
the subcommittee will facilitate.
Yeah, can we just, I've never evaluated superintendent before, so my apologies.
It's really fun.
Yeah, it really is. There's a lot of feedback to write. Let me tell you.
Also, just on the dates, what was the second date?
January 3rd,
Right there.
which would be our first meeting back, obviously, after winter break.
Yeah. So
I want to return, I heard your point, and we'll come back to the scheduling before we wrap this up.
yeah, I generally agree with the premise of trying to complete the evaluation before the school committee turns over, because I do think we didn't have that, obviously, when I just joined, but that would be a strange process. Because then again, I can't see how any of the feedback would align with the rest of the school committee members, given how little you're doing. I guess my question is, like, as the relation of how this works, like, I think one of the conversations we had around the curriculum stuff was that, like, bringing the most important work of the school committee to the whole school committee. The evaluation of the superintendent at large seems like, right, one of the most important things the whole school committee does. But what I hear you saying is that everybody still provides feedback about the superintendent. So, like, in this subcommittee proposal, is the superintendent still coming and presenting about, like, the artifacts to the whole committee? Like, what did that mid-year and what does that summative evaluation meeting look like? I guess is what I'm not clear.
I mean, my understanding is that the subcommittee would be the group that would sort of hammer that out as far as what's happening when, who's doing what. But, and my understanding is that the subcommittee would be the vehicle for sort of receiving and processing the input from members of the school committee who are not serving on that subcommittee. That, you know, the subcommittee, like any subcommittee, would report to full school committee meetings. So, you know, whereas today we have finance and school building committee, like the superintendent evaluation subcommittee, if it had had a meeting, would bring that report update to the full school committee, and there would be that opportunity, you know, each time there had been a meeting to, like, get input from the others as they would receive the update, ask questions and so on. You know, I want to just be clear, I would not call either of the past 2 years actually having participated in evaluation either. So I don't think any of us have participated before in this process in a meaningful, like, true sense. And that's because we've had various, you know, we've had interims, we've had transitions happening when we would have been. So hopefully, I'm knocking on wood, this year presents a great opportunity for us to do this process the way it's intended to be done, with a sitting superintendent who's able to participate in the full cycle. So just to be clear, like I don't know any better than any of you how to do this, but
Well, the question on subcommittee, I mean, page 5 articulates in those bullets there in the document, the MASC recommendations. If you decide to do a subcommittee, the subcommittee can either do part of the process. Some school committees give the subcommittee the full evaluation, and then the subcommittee brings a recommendation. So those are give the subcommittee some of the work to do in the same way that you give some of the work with the budget and other things, even though the full board carries it. And I think, probably not leaning towards giving the subcommittee the entire process and then bringing it back and saying, do you agree or disagree? But those are the two, if you look at the bullets here, those are kind of the two approaches they're recommending here, if you decide to develop an evaluation subcommittee.
Yeah, and I think we're trying to correct for an experience you've never had.
Yeah.
And I think that is the disadvantage you have coming into this conversation. But when you think about your own evaluation in your organization, there's probably some level of consistency and expectation just for calibration. My hope is through this subcommittee process, there'll be a common set of expectations so that when we're reading the rubric, we're all thinking about it in the same way. So if the subcommittee determines that for this particular item in the rubric, the evidence that we will all be judging is this versus, well, I looked at that and you looked at that and I looked at this. So I don't know how this is all going to play out, but I think it's going to be better than what we did before. You don't have the experience of that, but I hope that with each year we'll get better. I think just like the district is getting stronger, I think we as individuals serving on the school committee, every year we learn something more that allows us to refine our work, and this is an opportunity to add that to an evaluation process and hopefully make it a respectful experience for our new superintendent. And I'm sure if it's not, you would let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been through a few of these.
well, and not to jump ahead, but we will be talking next about our goals, and actually this process, perhaps we probably should have started talking about our goals first, because this actually kind of falls under our goals. Just to preview, we have been talking about governance and systems as one of the areas that we want to work this year to create sustainable and transparent systems for the work that we're doing as a school committee. This is one of the main tasks sort of under that. So, okay, so it sounds like we're, so far at least a few of us have expressed a preference for creating a subcommittee. And then, so that, I guess I'll go ahead and make a motion to create a subcommittee. I think if it's possible in this space right now to identify those 3 of us who are wanting to serve on that subcommittee, I think that would be ideal, because then with our vote, if we approve it, we could charge the 3 people to kind of go off and begin the process of basically begin the work. Maybe I'll hold off on the motion as I'm thinking this through until we've gotten that a little step further in the discussion. Who wants to serve on this subcommittee? Is anybody eager to do that? Knowing we can have up to 3, hopefully 3 of us.
Right, but I think there are 2 different things, right? One is sort of the agreement that we're forming the subcommittee is one, and then 2, then it's
Who's on it?
Right.
So we should vote first to just create the
Just wondering
subcommittee
sort of
and
if
then
that's
identify who's on it.
That's the order of.
Yep.
business.
Okay. All right, so I take it back. I didn't withdraw the motion. All right, so a motion's on the table to form a subcommittee of the school committee to work on the superintendent evaluation process. So would there be a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only point I say is, I think that the subcommittee, like, we don't have this figured out, right? And I think
Right.
part of the work of the subcommittee is figuring this out, but the point that Peter's making is just, where does the subcommittee work stop and where does the school committee work start? And where's like the handoff between that is the piece that ultimately I would hope whoever's on the subcommittee, right, helps figure out. And I think I'd be less in favor of the full, like, subcommittee compiles everything, does everything in meetings, and then comes back and then just says, here's the evaluation, y'all vote on them. Like, we are a small enough
I
group.
thought we
that-
weren't doing that.
Yeah,
That's not
but
what-
well, again, that seeming like a possibility, but
No.
within the subcommittee structure, but we're a small enough group that,
Right.
to me, that doesn't feel
Yeah.
No.
necessary or great, but it's like, where is the balance between that and then all six of us doing everything, right? And it's being somewhere in the middle there that the subcommittee would work to figure out kind of how that process is created, given we don't have a historical process. Is that-
Right, and my analogy to that is the conversation we had earlier today about finance.
Yeah.
We talked about what's the goal and the objectives of this process,
Yeah.
knowing that we would iron out the details later.
Yeah.
I didn't expect him to show up with a budget today. But the analogy here is, what are we agreeing that we're all going to use when we're going through the evaluation process?
Yeah.
So as long as we're all on the same page that that's what this means, we still are individually responsible for providing feedback. I won't be compiling it, but we're individually responsible for providing the feedback, and then it is compiled and presented to you in a cohesive way for you to respond to. Like, I think that's just respectful. That was the one thing that we had done 2 years ago. It was consolidated, and I hope we would do the same thing, but each of us are responsible.
Yeah, I think we're just trying to get clarity as to the charge of the subcommittee and where that ends, the line of the subcommittee. And then when do we as a whole body get all the information and how do we participate in that? If I'm following sort of the two, I just don't have the right document open, so I don't have it. But I think those are the two things, right? It's either the subcommittee does it all and just comes to our presentation. I think we're saying no.
not
I
doing
think
that.
I sense that that's not the case. So there will be a subcommittee, and then the subcommittee will bring back the information for full discussion.
The information is the process, and then what artifacts will be used as evidence.
So I'm just going to read the bullets here because I think it will help. This is sort of what we're saying. So these are things the subcommittee may be responsible for, one or all. Whatever the subcommittee is not responsible for, the full school committee would be responsible for. The first thing on the list is approving goals. So we've basically just predetermined that that's something all of us will participate in because we are bringing that on our next agenda for September 20th. So off the bat, we'll all be participating in that first conversation, which is you'll present your goals to us, and we'll have some conversation and, hopefully in the course of that conversation, get to our point of majority of us approving your goals, ideally, right? So that's the first part, which we are all participating in. It also names focus indicators and the annual plan. So to be totally honest, those are terminology coming out of the rubric. I'm not confident that we're going to be there when we're discussing your goals. That seems pretty granular. That those might be pieces that the subcommittee could pick up and, okay, we've approved these goals. What are the focus indicators that we would look for out of those goals? So I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm just looking at that, and that seems to me like we're on that first bullet of this document, we're kind of discussing a way where the subcommittee is doing some but not all. The second bullet is collecting and assessing evidence related to goal progress and performance against standards. That strikes me as something the subcommittee is positioned to do with the superintendent. rather than all of us participating in that process, it's like a more focused process where you're able, we could just discuss what makes sense to include. But then the next bullet is collecting, compiling, and synthesizing performance ratings from individual committee members. And that's what you were just speaking to as something that, the subcommittee would collect, compile, and synthesize. So if everybody gave their ratings, then the subcommittee sort of produces the synthesis of all that information, and then determines based on that performance ratings to recommend. I mean, they could do that, they could not, but I think either way they synthesize the information. It just creates a more efficient process, I think. But I don't know if that makes sense.
One of the things I'll just mention that can be challenging is that synthesis part is hard. And I've had evaluations where I felt like I got a bunch of individual evaluations, which is less meaningful than if the committee can do a good synthesis and share, like, there's always going to be divergence among a group of people that's evaluating someone. But I think the more the process can help to provide me or future people in this position with something that's shared by all, I think is more meaningful and helpful.
And I would love to say that on our first attempt at doing this, that we will do that well. I'm going to be the optimist in this. I think for a few of you, you have nonprofit boards that you sit on for which you're evaluating the executive director, a very similar process happens. And some are better than others at creating a summary. But I think we should commit to putting our best foot forward to doing that, because as an employee of an organization, that's what I like. I would not want to have 6 very disparate pieces of feedback for one specific skill or competency. It's very difficult for the individual to respond to. So I think that's our responsibility.
Yeah, I'll say I like the way you walked through that and broke it down of what is full school committee and what is subcommittee work, and that makes sense to me.
To your point a few minutes ago, like actually codifying that would be the responsibility of the subcommittee, which would bring that back to the full school committee, to make sure we're all staying on the same page as we move forward. So, okay, so we have a motion, it's been seconded to form a subcommittee. So let's go ahead and vote on that first, and then return to the idea of who would serve on that subcommittee, and then also, and by the way, I'm not sure, we can talk about whether we need to even decide that tonight. We may not, and then the dates. So all in favor of forming a subcommittee for the superintendent evaluation process? Okay, that's unanimous. So we will form a subcommittee. Given that in 2 weeks we're hearing about your goals and you're presenting those to the full school committee, do we think we can take a little bit more time to identify the 3 members that serve on the subcommittee? Or do we feel ready to keep going on that discussion right now? I'm open.
I guess one question is, what would keep us from deciding today?
Yeah, only if anyone feels ambivalent about whether you want to serve on it or not, or at some point we're just gonna have to raise our hands, and if you're interested, we raise our hands, and if we have more than 3 who want to do it, we just have to figure out how we
do the lottery.
how we choose 3.
Whoever brought cookies.
That's right.
No, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just clarify one thing. Like, it seems like this subcommittee's biggest charge compared to the rest of the committee members is to provide evidence to support. No?
Oh, I'm
It's to
sorry.
work with the superintendent to compile that evidence.
Yes. Yeah.
For, which really is just, the commitment of the people on this subcommittee is to find additional time in our busy lives for another set of subcommittee meetings, which will be the three of you plus Peter, to create this process. So that's the crux of it, yeah.
I'm willing to help out if there aren't 3 other people who really want it.
Yeah, I can help out.
So we have 3.
Good.
What do you want to?
You're volunteering.
I thought you said you were on it. I thought you, no?
No, I was part of the original group
Yeah.
that was going to get together to come up with a recommendation of sorts today. I was not able to attend that meeting because the meeting was changed in time. So I did not attend. I was part of that group.
Are those meetings public? They're public meetings too.
Yeah, just like any subcommittee meetings, yeah. And, like any subcommittee meetings, they'll be set up around the schedules of the people that are on the subcommittee. So okay, Mark and Anna, were you saying you want to be on the subcommittee too?
Does it involve a lot of writing?
I mean,
The time I can squeeze it out,
I can do the writing.
but if it's have to do a lot of writing, like very hesitant.
well, I think we don't yet know. I mean, that's partly what we need to, it will involve writing because you'll be like
Yeah.
creating the reports for, Selena and Bev, do you want to be on this subcommittee?
Sorry, I'm juggling a crazy life right now.
Okay.
No childcare after school, so I can't commit to something else right now.
Okay.
But don't you have to be in the committee?
I don't know if I have to be on, I would like to be, I don't need to be. I don't know, I mean, when we get to the point of having 4 people who want to be on it, that's where I feel we should get strategic as far as like, should there be? And the only thing that I think about with actually, I think there is something to be said for having, anytime we're looking at kind of diversity across a subcommittee, I'm focused on longevity of the
Maybe
people
different
to
years,
kind of
yeah.
stagger,
Yeah, that makes
like
sense.
where first, second, third
Yeah.
year of your term,
Yeah.
just to be able to like roll the.
Thank you.
So,
Yes, thank you.
is that okay with you though?
Yes, yeah, it's okay with me. I'm just curious about this process. Never evaluating anyone in my life before, so it's such interesting. No, thank you. You can
Well,
take the
okay, but just to, back to where we were, you are still like fully we're all
Well,
fully
we all have-
participating in the process. It's just whether you're part of the advanced team, if you like working out the kinks, hopefully before we bring it to the full group.
Yeah.
So, okay. This could work out. I think what we're tentatively deciding is that it will be Mark, Anna, and myself on the subcommittee.
Do we need to vote for that? Did we vote for all this?
Well, I don't think so, because actually next meeting, we have a general topic on our advisory and subcommittees where we will be finalizing all of our advisory and subcommittees for the year. So actually, we can just kind of
Revisit it then.
fold this into that, because I think what we formally needed to do was vote to create the subcommittee, which we already did. And so as far as the scheduling, the other thing on the table, we don't have to decide this right now, it folds into the calendar discussion, was having the final evaluation conversation at the April 3rd meeting, which I know was,
It just means if there's enough discussion where we don't vote for it, then it gets pushed past the election, right?
Yeah.
That's the,
That's the last, yeah.
And I think
It's the risk.
if we don't do it before, it's very difficult for 4 people to fully represent what, basically the entirety of the school year. I think we should try to finish it before the new people join.
And you can't really add like an extra meeting,
We
right?
can.
Like, I guess we could.
We
right?
can, if it's necessary, we can. I mean, that could be something.
Not that I want to add more meetings.
We added quite a number.
You still feel them, right?
Love those meetings.
That's something we could do is, you know, if we said it's April 3rd, to me, it's just very important that we don't plan to have one of those 3 conversations when we already know somebody can't be there. I mean,
Yes.
so I think if we said we would do it April 3rd, then maybe we just know that if we're not for some reason able to bring that to a conclusion, then
Could we do like hold a second date to like complete it by such and such before the election? Is that possible?
sure. I mean, we can always we've added morning meetings, we've added,
Day meetings.
But I think hopefully
do
this
that.
process, like having the subcommittee, makes it more efficient, so we don't,
that would be
have
the
a lot
goal.
of discussion, and we're keeping everybody informed, so there's no surprises, right? Like,
Right.
That was one of the points of doing it.
That's the goal. Okay. So let's revisit that.
okay.
But maybe tentatively, I do feel like March 6th feels like pretty
Too soon.
pretty soon.
2 months after the mid-year.
Yeah. I think April's the,
I'd rather do April 3rd and then push us to get it done on April 3rd.
Okay.
We punish ourselves.
Okay.
I agree.
All right. So that's all good on that. Thanks everybody. So okay, next school committee goals. Did everyone have a chance to look at the updated version in our folder? Okay, so the version that you see there, Selena and Bev, that just reflects sort of the conversation at our last meeting where we clearly spent the bulk of our time kind of refining that second category of goals, student academic achievement and well-being. So we tracked our changes there so you could just see
Oh, yeah. No, I
how
took
that conversation flowed. And at this point, just open it up for any additional thoughts anyone has.
I just had one comment. I was reading through that first bullet under student academic achievement and well-being, and student academic achievement feels a little generic for me, and it doesn't quite capture personalized learning, right? It's like, okay, well, you hit a benchmark and then you go to the next one, but to truly capture the essence of personalized learning, I don't think that bullet does it. So I was just gonna make a suggestion where after equitably to add help students achieve at their highest levels academically, so that it feels like you're and which might all be different, but I really love that we're putting in equitable because I think that makes complete sense, but really pushing, like really pushing the kids that need to be challenged, and like really looking at like, hey, you can do more. Like I believe in you. Like that's what I really want. Like I feel like with personalized learning. So so that would be my only suggestion to that bullet.
Does anybody, did that just show up on your?
it did.
Yes. Okay, great.
Oh.
Any thoughts on that suggestion? I think,
in the absence of Peter having the longevity to set benchmarks or anything like that, I'm glad that we were able to incorporate something that reasonably reflects the need for high expectations. So I think this is a good compromise.
other suggestions?
That's my only.
I can make a motion. My motion sheet.
I second, I'm sorry.
There are two beliefs in there that kind of like puts me off as a like English second language learner.
What?
Can you repeat that sentence one more time? And does
The
it?
first one?
No, this first bullet.
Support the superintendent through the
To
entry plan.
accurately help students achieve at the highest level academically.
Yeah, to equitably help students achieve at the highest level.
At their highest level.
Or you could say highest academic level.
I think that sounds better.
Okay. Yeah,
I
that's.
see what you're saying.
I will make a motion to approve the 2023-2024 Milton School Committee goals.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Okay, great. That's unanimous. So
Awesome.
I just want to, two things. I really want to thank you all for participating in this process the way that we did. I feel like really proud of this work, which leads me to say to the community, we look forward to sharing these goals with you. And I would just love to figure out the best way for us to do that. I mean, thinking about communications, obviously it will need to be like put on the website. And I'd also like to, I don't know the way to do it, just because we really haven't, as a school committee, like used, honestly, many communication tools, whether it's like we don't email, but I don't know if maybe you could send an email on behalf of the school committee to the community. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we could do
Given
that,
that
or we
we've
could wrap it
done this,
into
like-
another district communication too.
Yeah, that would be fine. But I think it's important for the community to come along and understand the work that we've done. We've identified these key focus areas, and we will use this to hold ourselves accountable for our work this year. So maybe we can follow up about opportunities you see for that. Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Lastly, under Chair's report is just circling back on our calendar. We've continued to refine this document. And the key change, or a key change is having added the 3 workshop discussion, essentially retreat meetings that we're going to do in late October, mid-December, and mid-February, which will also just shape our work towards our goals as we just set them. So those are highlighted in yellow, having been added. Peter, do you have any?
I also added I added 4 curriculum presentation / review / learning opportunities throughout the year. So starting on October 4th, I'm not sure we're going to have our MCAS results by that point. So that may make sense to move to the 18th. The problem is time with the site council presentation. It gets a little challenging. So you can see there's one in October, one in December on December 6th, one on the 28th of February, and then a summative on May 15th.
That makes me think of 2 things. One, we had floated the idea of having a time limit on the site council presentations, which might allow you, or might allow us to have other agenda items included. And I also want to raise the question about the operating protocols, we talked about the possibility of either taking a series of documents that already exist and creating one for the school committee, or establishing a subcommittee that would do that. So I would love to have a discussion at some point as to what direction we would like that to take, similarly as we spoke about the subcommittee for the evaluation process.
Yeah, good point.
I thought about that today.
Say that again?
I was thinking about that today, yeah.
Is this for, would it be for the data portion or just?
No, the operating protocols are how
Oh,
we
okay,
how
how
we
we
work
do it.
together and what
Yep.
what's the decision making when or the discussions that are had when it's not the full committee. For example, when people are in meetings with the superintendent or elected officials, those kinds of things are all. The good thing is, Dr. Burrows gave us many examples. This is nothing new.
Oh, yes.
MASC
Yep.
has examples,
Yep,
but I actually
that one.
think the ones he
Okay.
had were far more robust than what I
they were
saw
a lot-
online.
They were a lot better than that.
But I do want to make sure that we have the opportunity to have that discussion. It just goes back to having good operating procedures as an organization.
We can definitely address that on our October 25th retreat. You know, I think that's a good setting to really dig into that, but I don't think we should wait until then to necessarily bring it up. So maybe an initial discussion, you know, before that.
So October 25th is not, it's not a date I can make, just so you know.
It's not, okay.
It's not.
Okay, can we,
But maybe if we decide to form a subcommittee, could we add it to the list for next week? Is that an option? Advisory committee, this is not a subcommittee.
For the operating procedures.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Oh,
just,
yeah.
I know we're looking to have a retreat workshop type of
But
event.
if in the absence of having the date, we could either, when we get a new date, we can put it on the agenda then, or add it to the list of advisory committees that will be working on something.
Yeah, I agree with having that as an advisory. That's one of our goals that we've set for the year. Having a committee dedicated to helping us accomplish that goal. It makes all the sense in the world.
okay, so adding that to next 2 week, September 20th conversation.
Yep.
Would be a time to discuss and vote in the context of approving all of them, to vote to add that potentially to our list of those. Okay. Then maybe what could happen is that committee could form, bring together some initial thinking, and ideally be able to perhaps bring something to that first fall retreat, governance retreat, whenever, not October 25th, but I'll work with Charlene to circulate alternative dates for that kind of late October time. Does that seem like a good next step for that? Okay.
I think there's a lot out there, so I don't think it's going to take a long time to even just put together some kind of draft.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the calendar at this point? Okay. You know, it's a living document. We'll keep updating it as things come up and just go from there. So that brings us to Finance Subcommittee.
All right. Good evening, everyone. We have 4 warrants that need to be approved during this meeting. Warrant number 2, totaling $38,596.07. It was payable on July 20th, 2023. Warrant number 5 in the amount of $416,265.62. that was paid on August 10th, 2023. Warrant number 6 in the amount of $222,082.81, which was payable on August 17th, 2023. And warrant number 8 in the amount of $949,503.68, payable on August 31st, 2023. May I get a motion to approve these warrants?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
And let me type this up really quick. And love to give you an update on the joint select board school committee subcommittee, finance subcommittee meeting that happened earlier today. We had a very productive meeting with representatives from town government. It was Nick Milano and Amy Dexter, the newly formed select board finance committee, and the members of the school committee finance subcommittee, where we received an overview of the town's plans to create a 5-year financial plan, as well as ensuring that we have a fiscally responsible plan for funding that work. We shared some goals related to what we aspire to happen in the school district's budget in terms of what the process should look like. Dr. Burrows and Dr. Pavlicek both shared their vision for what we would like to see. We also agreed to have regular joint finance committee meetings, subcommittee meetings of both the select board and the school committee finance subcommittee every 2 weeks starting in mid-October. And we also acknowledge that we will be reaching out to Dave Humphreys, who's the chair of the warrant committee, to ensure as we create the meetings and start having those planning discussions, that there are representatives from the warrant committee present in those meetings. And we adjourned at 9:28. If there's anything that anyone else would like to add, that was a very nice summary of what really happened. But if there's anything else you think is important that's worth sharing, please feel free, for those of you who were present, which both Selena and Mark.
No, great job.
I just had one quick question. I know, like, it's so hard to keep track of, like, when these meetings, like, is there a way to, like, for it to, like, show up on your calendar so that you can, like, attend? I sent Charlene an email earlier today about it, just to, like, because I'd love to make some of them if possible, just so I can.
She has to post it as a meeting for all the school committee members to go, but there's absolutely no problem with that. We have members of the public that were present at that meeting.
Awesome.
We just need to post it in the correct way so that the entire school committee may attend.
Okay, awesome.
I think we can, I know we've done this before, but we can sort of ask her in a standing fashion to cross-post all of our policy and finance
I did
meetings,
send her an email about
so
that too, about policy as well.
whatever, so that others of us are able to attend, just sort of, and don't have to confirm that she cross-posted that one in particular, if that makes sense.
Right.
You may have just said this. Who are the select board finance subcommittee members?
It's Aaron Bradley and Ben.
Ben Zoll.
Thank you.
Okay.
It was interesting because we had 2 meetings happening at the same time together, which I think, sounds like last year that process began and was helpful in making our way through. And it definitely sounds like the town wants to take another step further in really doing joint budget development and knowing more early as opposed to being on separate tracks and then trying to braid them together at the end. So I think we see that as an opportunity, and Glenn and I are working with our leadership to bring them together too in ways they maybe haven't before, to get their thinking and as a team prioritize where the need is. As I mentioned earlier, some of the things that we're looking at in probably years 1, 2, and 3 are looking at all of our staffing and all of our strategic plan goals, and to get there, do we have to our staff in the best position they can be right now, or are there other ways that we can kind of plan and organize to maximize and reach our goals? So those are conversations we're going to be having over the next years. And again, like I said before, well before the November kind of timeline of when we have to have some of these decisions made. So we've got a few months to do some work for FY25. I think my feeling is FY26 will probably be in a much better position because all of this year we'll be talking about FY26 when Glenn is here for his next year.
Thank you for sharing the extra detail. It's much appreciated.
Yeah.
No, but the goal is to make sure that we're all communicating. We have 3 functioning committees that all are working in unison for the town. Aaron Bradley made a very specific point that the school is one of the town departments. It's not seen as separate, and we will plan in that manner. And it's, I think that this year's process, starting off together, we're starting on the right foot. And we all have realistic expectations about what can be done by when to ensure that we have a cohesive budget to present to the town, to the warrant committee, to the select board. So I'm very pleased with how we're starting the school year. Thank you.
That's great. And I know you mentioned that you'll be getting in touch with Dave Humphreys. It also might, in line with what you're describing, I guess a wonder I have is whether, what the timeline will be for the warrant committee to identify its schools subcommittee, that if that could be formed perhaps sooner, then that would allow that group to be aligned with this same time frame. So that sounds really good. Thanks.
And that's it for the finance committee.
Okay, great.
What's it? Is it school building?
School building committee?
School building. I will take the school building committee update. So we met on the 21st. One of the primary orders of business currently in front of us is the request for services for an owner project manager, which is somebody who helps manage the construction project. So we had previously discussed it, and we voted to approve the OPM RFS that have been kind of collectively put together by the NIC at the town and the committee. It was then subsequently approved by the select board and is now out for bidding. There's actually a site walkthrough on Wednesday that I'll be attending along with other members of the committee with prospective OPMs to look at the site, and then responses are due, forgetting exactly when, likely kind of a week or 2 after the site visit. So fairly soon we hope to have responses. We have a kind of committee process within that committee of like evaluating these submissions and then ultimately kind of working to select an OPM to get that on board and give us some extra expertise in staffing. So that is the primary goal right now in front of the SVC. Kind of a parallel track, we're moving forward with a similar request for service for architectural services. We're still in the phase of like crafting that, putting that together. We're hopeful that we can actually vote to approve it and get it out to bid even prior to the OPM being fully selected, but have the OPM on board in order to help with the evaluations of the submissions for the architect. But that way we are not delaying even further, and we're trying to, again, continue to move with as much urgency as possible, given we know the space issues and the needs for a new school building. So those are kind of 2 of the primary things we are working on as a committee. Another thing that came up was discussion of the land swap. Sean updated, he's in some conversations with the town lawyer and Nick Milano and them with the EEA to just make sure all the paperwork associated with the land swap that was approved at town meeting moves forward and passes, and the things that need to be done as it relates to like state legislature approval, that all those things are kind of moving along within the timeline. I think my understanding, you correct me, is that for like February is usually around when the legislature will like vote on these types of things, and they do that kind of as a collective package. So it's just, that update is just that, staying on top of folks to make sure paperwork doesn't get lost, things get processed, and that doesn't bite us down the road. In general, we've talked about kind of broad strokes about just the timeline for doing all this. We still don't have like a fully constructed timeline of, how to build up all this stuff. So that's something that is still in discussion, and we still are pushing on to ensure we are kind of moving towards an ultimate goal and with urgency. The only other thing that was discussed was a quick update about the MSBA. The MSBA had a meeting that Peter was at and Sean was at, and maybe some other folks. Essentially just asking, I believe, for additional information, which is somewhat positive news because it means they haven't totally kicked us out of the process. We did not, I think, my understanding is we didn't get to this phase last year. We did get to this phase, not the year before, but the year before that. So we've been at this phase previously through this same school building approach and didn't move beyond that, obviously, but it's obviously good news, at least, that MSBA is continuing to talk to us, engage with us in conversations. I don't know if there's anything else to share on that, but that's the full extent of the SBC update. Anything?
No, if you recall, I wasn't at the last
yeah.
meeting, so.
Thanks. And last but not least, facilities.
I can start.
It's your turn. You got to do it.
So we had a facilities advisory committee meeting on August 23rd. We had some good attendance. Essentially, we started with, Chris Hayden, the director of Consolidated Facilities, was unable to attend, so we weren't able to get a Consolidated Facilities report about summer activities. So we pushed that to the next meeting. So we're hopeful to hear about everything that was able to be done this summer. We really heard kind of a presentation from Glenn and Peter just about some of their plans as it relates to compiling information about school space impacts and kind of ultimately planning a report to share to update some documents that they previously had that explain kind of the spaces that have been most impacted by the over-enrollment within the schools and the art rooms that have been lost, the stages that have been lost, things like that. So we have some documentation that reflects that, but Glenn is working through a process to kind of update that and create a more finalized kind of report regarding this as a step one, and then as step two, kind of taking that report, evaluating it, and then moving forward to see about ongoing short-term and medium-term space projects to address the challenges with space that we will continue to experience until a new school is built. So that is work we're excited about. Additionally, the committee is planning on a full-day site visit that is scheduled for September 21st. Charlene is being very helpful in helping to make this happen. It involves visiting 6 schools all within one day, which she continues to encourage and say that that's a lot. Maybe we should break it up. But
police stopping traffic.
we'll be sprinting from site to site. So we're gonna try and fit that in. That's what the committee wanted to do, is to try and see the space needs across or space issues across all the schools while students were in the building. So we're fitting in with that window. So we're still working out the exact schedule, but that is scheduled for the 21st. I believe, Val, you had mentioned at one point potentially wanting to join. I don't know. We had to change the date. I don't know if the 21st works, but just put it out for the full committee. Obviously, if anybody else would like to join, please let us know. We obviously can post it as a full school committee, or I'm not sure if we actually need to because there won't be really discussion. We're just going to be observing. But if we want to dot our I's and cross our T's and you think you might want to join, it certainly couldn't hurt. Well, with the exception of having the public attend. We're not going to have the ability to have public attend. So we can't post as a school committee. So
There would be no deliberation occurring. It would just be
Like you're visiting.
Yes.
visiting to gain information. I think either way, though, that leads me to a question about maybe from that visit and once the report is produced, whether we could perhaps add this to a full school committee meeting agenda. So maybe it could be under a facilities advisory committee report, but perhaps where we have some of that documentation to kind of review and interact with a little more.
I mean, this will be an
Totally.
opportunity for the subcommittee to see,
Yeah.
or advisory committee to see what people have been talking about, but the report will reflect
What is seen.
directly from principals what the issues and concerns are. So it'll be really clear. This will just kind of bring it to life, I think, for the committee.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the clarification, because that means for those of us who may not be able to make it, we can at least get the summary of what you observed. That's very helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, I have a concern that, with 5 years to go and uncertainty about new construction and how quickly it comes online, it's really important that we have a gauge on what's left in our existing facilities. It feels really tight.
So yes.
Yeah, it is.
So you said September 21st is going to be the site visit day?
September 21st, starting at, again, the exact schedule hasn't been confirmed, but likely starting at 8 and going through 3 o'clock or so.
Sorry, I have back to school night tonight.
You just do the full day and then you go back to school and
That's right.
just make a day of it. So those, anyways, to get back to the update, those were essentially the primary things we discussed. And then we just talked, we're continuing to talk about, as we discussed at a full school committee, just the purpose of how can the subcommittee be most effective? And it was brought up by people who've been on it for a while, just potentially more discussion about the upcoming capital improvement needs of the existing schools, even separate from space, of just given that the school buildings are getting to kind of 20 years of age, ensuring that we're having conversations with Chris Hayden and Glenn Peter about just, what are the foreseeable capital improvement needs on the existing facilities that we will need to address in order to maintain them in the condition they're in, even overcrowded or not. So that's kind of some ongoing work that we're going to be doing and try and get dive into once Chris is able to join us again.
Thank you. This was extremely helpful.
Yeah,
Appreciate the update.
Anything I missed?
No, I think one of the things that I was thinking about with the site, like visiting all the schools too, is a way for we have these subcommittees and it's so great that we have people who want to volunteer, but it could spark some ideas and hey, what could we do? And a lot of the people on our subcommittees have backgrounds in these areas, so that's also a way maybe we're not looking at things a certain way, maybe we should I think it's really almost like a thought starter for us to kind of decide hey, what's our charge really as this committee, in addition to capital improvements, what are we doing, right? So so I think it will be a good conversation starter, and I and I've run into several subcommittee members along, and they're just really eager to help. So I think this would be great as a way to get that conversation started.
Thank you both so much. All right, so that's just bringing us to next meeting agenda items, and on our calendar, under Chair's report, as we've already mentioned, we will discuss advisory and subcommittees across the board for this coming year. We will sort of formalize the plan for those. We will also hear about the superintendent's goals, discuss and vote on those. Advisory committee reports. So I know that policy will be meeting, so policy will be a report next time. Will finance be meeting, or what are any other reports as of now that we know about?
Finance doesn't have a pressing agenda for that second
Okay.
September meeting, but in October, we should.
Okay. All right. So if there are other reports that need to be added, we can do that between now and 2 weeks from now.
SBC will meet, but facilities advisory won't. I don't know if there will be much of an update from SBC, but
We can always add it, and if we need to take it off, we can. Okay.
Now
Now, there's a topic that I've been hearing sort of folks, and I don't know if you can look more into it, Dr. Burrows, but it's around the after-school care. I hear almost daily from a handful of parents from Cunningham. Obviously, I've shared my woes, personal woes, but I'm just hearing from parents, and sort of they want to know about the wait list, what's being done. So if we can sort of spend some time thinking about that, just in terms of, I know we were very thoughtful about how we were going to invest in the after-school care, and we sat through a presentation of how creative we were going to be as to having third-party vendors on site, but it's still not quite addressing the issue. So I just keep hearing from parents, and I would love to just
We
give
talked
them
about
some
that
sort
in our last meeting.
Yeah.
Great. Yes.
And what I said in the last meeting was that in a future meeting I would come back as we continue kind of to work on this and try to figure out. Were you at the last?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, that's
so
what I
that
thought.
explains
That's what I
why.
thought. That's why I was like, that's why.
No, I'm sorry. I was
No,
on.
neither
I was
was I.
on vacation.
You're not alone.
I was
You're
on
not alone.
vacation.
I was in your ride.
I can, we can follow up.
Thank you.
Yeah, but also, I am planning to come back after we continue to work on it. Glenn and I are meeting with the director tomorrow, right? So we're continuing to look at this and try to figure out the structural pieces that are making it more challenging, the staffing issues, all those things, because we do want to meet, as much need as we possibly can.
Thank you.
And it may be the kind of thing where, the current model can sustain X amount. We may need to look at, well, if we want to, if the need is another 40 students, what does that mean kind of broadly in terms of that structure? So that's something that we're definitely talking about and looking at.
And one of the positive things is we know exactly how many families need a seat because there's a wait list. It's a much easier discussion when you're working with real numbers.
So potentially that's under your report.
It could be, yeah.
At the next meeting, at least a brief update. Okay.
Yeah, just to be able to respond to folks with some sort of clarity. I think that'd be helpful.
And I'm responding. Some are contacting me.
I'm sure they are.
I've been wearing, a hat and glasses.
They stick out a little bit more probably, walking around in a suit. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. All right. Any other items? You can always email if you think of things, and as long as we are doing that in the next week, then we can add them on.
Great.
Otherwise, congratulations on the beginning of school,
Thank you.
and don't want to lose sight of the fact that it's actually only 1 week. Starting today. 1 week from
Tomorrow.
today.
We started on
It started a week ago today. That's what I was trying to say. Congratulations. It's your first week
First week.
that you've made
Training
it
wheels
through.
are coming off.
Yeah. Yeah, we can have this conversation, and it's like we're just talking to you like you've been here all along, and we're in this work. So don't want to lose sight of that. That's something important that happened since our last meeting, and now we're back. We're back. Year's underway.
Yep.
We're all back juggling our day jobs and our parenting and our school committee service. So thanks everybody for being back. And this has been good. It's 8:40. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, great.
yay.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank you.